Great. So we're live with Meredith Coloma, and I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Welcome to the Guitarbench interview.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, delighted. Let's get stuck into it. My first question is pretty much the same for everybody, but I think it's a really important one, and that's to see how you kind of got started with sort of guitars and building guitars.
Yeah, I kind of have a unique experience. I was a fiddler, a musician before I started building guitars, and I spent a lot of time on the road where I wasn't legally allowed into the bars or pubs after I played a show. So I was too young. And I spent a lot of time either in a van or waiting for the rest of the crew at a Motel 6 or something along the lines or road between gigs. And I just would find pawn shop guitars and fix them, or the bass player would hit their guitar and their headstock would crack, and I'd have to find a way to fix it before we got into a town that actually had resources. So it's kind of, I just got intrigued with fixing things because I was the only one that had the time on the road. And then it wasn't until I went to acting school in New York. I hated acting school. I was terrible at it. But every day walking home from the school, it was just close to Union Square in New York. There's a violin maker, and I played violin and fiddle, so I would go in there and play his instruments. And he showed me that he built them from scratch. And to me, that was like, I didn't even think that was a job. I didn't think people did that. I never thought about who was behind the instrument. So that kind of started the intrigue. And I was about 15, 16 years old then. And then I went when I was around 17 or 18 to Summit School on Vancouver Island to learn the trade. So I was there for a couple months, and then I had these guitars, but I wasn't really happy with the sound. So I called up Roger Sadowski. I emailed him and I said, hey, when I was touring, your instruments were the best. I've got these guitars that I've made. Would you, if I happen to be in New York sometime, tell me why my instruments aren't up to snuff and what I could work on? And he was like, absolutely. He's like, come by the shop. I got an email, I think it was around like 9 p.m. And I was there at 8 a.m. the next morning outside his shop. I flew from Vancouver to New York overnight and was like, hey, and he's like, Meredith? Yep. So he went over my guitars. He was very nice, and he told me what I could work on and what I did well. I wasn't expecting any compliments. I wanted to know really what quality was. And then he offered me an apprenticeship. So I started working for Sadowski, and that was my first apprenticeship. So that's kind of how I started in a very short form way.
And I guess how did things go with Roger and everything after?
Oh, it was great. I loved working there. There's so many musicians of all sorts and backgrounds, and kind of the best that play his instruments. So it was an eye-opener in terms of a small manufacturer setting. And also he was very, very detail-oriented person. So to be up to snuff is really hard to do when you're just kind of beginning. So I did fretwork for 9 months. That's all I did. And if I hadn't done that though, I wouldn't have been able to do as well when I was starting my own company with repairs. Like, I was the kid that could do a full refret and fret dress in 35 minutes. So I ended up doing a lot of repairs when I started my own business just to keep my business afloat. So if it wasn't for Roger torturing me for those 9 months, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Got it.
Yeah.
And where did you go after Sadowski?
I joke. I was deported from the States back to Canada. But no, I came back home to Vancouver where my family was because I was really into gypsy jazz guitars. And the ones that I was intrigued with were Michael Dunn art guitars. So I ended up stalking Michael for a couple months until all he could hear is my name around the neighborhoods. And he finally called me and said, fine, I'll take you. So I did another apprenticeship with Michael Dunn, and I learned some crazy joinery techniques that I still use today. Just curve joinery and things I had never seen before in instrument making. He kind of showed me that you can have an amazing sounding instrument, but also include the art aspect. Yeah. Then after I was with Michael for about 2.5 years, and then I went to the Montreal Guitar Show for the first time, showing my own instruments, and I did a art piece on an OM style instrument, and it had a sun ray. I guess it was a bunch of red and yellow, so it was satinwood and Paduke that was joined together with some ironwood that was green and yellow satinwood sides and things, and that it made the rays of the sun in a mountain range, and that got me into quite a bit of magazines that year, as I believe I was only 19, so I was a young guitar maker showing this art piece, and it got a lot of attention, so that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Great. And now you're on your own, I guess.
Yeah, 2013 I started Coloma Guitars, and I haven't really looked back.
Awesome. Maybe I suppose your main focus, I understand now, is on electrics, right?
Yeah, I did the art guitar thing for many years, but I found that the clientele was a bit difficult to work with. I love building the instruments, but I started backing away from that when I was getting phone calls at 2 a.m. saying, hey, I know we were talking about the parrot inlay on the fretboard, but I think I want to put my beagle on there instead. And I'm going, that inlay was done 2 weeks ago. So I'm not going to go back and take that fretboard off. But that was just, for me, I was building constantly for years and years. And I just said, no more acoustics. They take so much of my time, my energy, and I don't have time to run a business and build while still being able to communicate as much as I would like to with my customers. So many of those clients wanted to learn how to build guitars. So I started teaching guitar building and then building electrics on the side. Electrics, we've done quite a bit of them, but we didn't really go into full production until last year of my own designs. I've mostly been doing 3D design and engineering for, the top 3 big companies, as well as guitarists who want to have their own line. So I kind of do a go-to-market plan for many guitarists.
Great. And I suppose whenever I've kind of seen your videos, reels, photos, we see a lot of swirls.
Yes, I'm one of very few builders that do swirl finishes. I do them for large factories as well as in my own shop. It's kind of funny to me though, because the way I do them is super, super simple. I use room temperature water, put some borax, and use acrylic or enamel paints that float on top, and then slowly dip a guitar in. But it seems like complete voodoo to a lot of people, and it can go wrong very often. But I've got it down. I just think it's funny when I send the video to a customer and he's like, are you dunking my guitar in a garbage bin? That's absolutely what I'm doing, yes.
Well, I mean, the garbage bin is an invaluable tool in building, right? Especially if you're relicking guitars, it's invaluable.
Yeah, it's just so crazy. Like, we build intricate electrics with many laminates, but you do a Fender copy body, like a Strat with a swirl, and 200,000 people love it, So I guess there's those old companies that still hold the peak of marketing, but it's funny when I'm like, why did that 30 seconds of a clip of me doing something versus my 4 hours of carving this neck?
Well, I think maybe it's because those 80s guitars they've kind of disappeared.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
You used to see them like 10 years ago. They were everywhere. Everybody, you and nobody wanted them because yeah, oh, you know, like I mean, other than some of the gems, right?
Yeah,
Like oh, it's a hammer, oh, you know, like
for sure. Oh yeah, we do a
oh,
lot of like gem and RG swirls. So many RG swirls. People love the watermelon swirls. Oh, it's endless. I'm grateful for the work though, so I won't say
yeah.
too many terrible things.
But I think the most incredible thing for most of us is that it's like you're putting it in water.
Oh yeah.
What's going on?
Oh yeah.
You know?
People are, they love the result, but they don't understand how that happens. And when you show them, it's pretty funny. It's not like I'm putting the electronics in the water.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but I think most of us are like, oh, what manner of witchery is, you know?
Oh
What
yeah.
manner of voodoo is this?
You got to seal that body well.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Or maybe that's why we see so many of these like flood rescue guitars come up.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I look at it, I'm going, are you sure some dude try something? You know, some amateur
Yeah.
dude trying something. Yeah, and I guess one of the things I suppose coming mostly from an acoustic background
Hmm.
that I'm always quite surprised about is sort of like the cost of components for
Oh
electrics,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
like for acoustics, we all get all like, oh, I'm not gonna pay $200 for a set of tuners, you know, for a really good set of tuners. That's just, you know, why would I pay that amount for tuners? And then I kind of look at electrics and I'm like, wait, like, you know, just pickups, bridges, they just cost a lot.
So much. And they're not things you can make. You know, with acoustics, you can choose whether you want to make your bridge or not. You can order it to save time. There's that kind of, is it worth my time, the value? Uh, but with metalworking and electric components, it's so, you can't really, I mean, you could make a capacitor, but it wouldn't be really worth it, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes paying, and what I found with our higher end guitars, people are very selective about their components, the pickups, the like how many winds on the coils, and we do a lot of the P90s ourselves, but people want to know exact specifications, or if you have an orange drop capacitor or an oil and paper capacitor. And some of these things, like for specific oil and paper capacitors, you're paying $25 plus shipping from Eastern Europe. So that's just one tiny little component, but it runs up the bill quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah. And now there's I see I I kind of don't know, but there's just been so much talk about, you know, this component, that component, this component, that component. And and for sure every single component um in the signal path, of course, and in the tone generation, it does make a difference. But
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, I got friends who are like, oh yeah, you know, this one has like this like special, I don't know, like special capacitor in it or something like that. And then they stick it into this cheap you know, one of these cheap mini pedals, right? From
Yeah.
China that they got from like for like $30 and they plug it in there. I'm like, wait, that's your weakest link there. That isn't that the one that you need to upgrade.
Yeah. I try not to get into the tone bro arguments too. Those can get pretty out of hand.
Yeah, 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 and I guess like somebody, I remember somebody once told me, you know, oh yeah, I got it like I got the fretboard scalloped, right? And I love the feel of like the ebony fretboard. I'm like, wait. You scallop the fretboard, yeah. And you're telling me you like the feel of the material that is now scalloped away. He's like, yes. And I'm like, sure. Like, cool,
You
okay.
just smile and nod. Yeah. Like,
Like,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
cool, yeah. You know, I can see that. You know. So, so So yeah, I guess I know that time is a little bit short for now. So maybe, I mean, let's just move on to kind of what's next for Coloma Guitars for the business.
Well, right now I applied to be a master builder at the Fender custom shop. So we'll see how that goes. We'll know in about a month or two. So cross your fingers for me. And thank you. And right now we're doing our Freya line of electric guitars. We have a solid body line that we're trying to keep around the $1,000 US range, and which is very difficult to do in Canada, but I just want our instruments accessible. And then we have a semi-hollow version that's our higher end model that we're doing at $2,500. So in order, for custom instruments, we're trying to be as affordable as possible, but also it's high level of craftsmanship. And we've had really good results. We did it kind of out of trying to survive COVID with a small business and employees. And we'd never done a solid body line with the crew that I have now. And after all we teach a lot of guitar building classes, but with COVID, we weren't able to. So I didn't want to lay all these guys off. I wanted them to hang around and still be part of it. So we started building these Freyas, and our community has been amazing. They've purchased so many. We have a dealer in Vancouver as well as in the States. And yeah, we're trying to expand.
Awesome. Well, great. I suppose speaking about your own guitars, I know that we said we won't get into the whole tone thing, so I won't get into the whole tone thing. But if I may, let's get a little bit, I think just to wrap up, just a little bit into the tone wood thing.
Okay.
Because there has been, particularly over the past 5 years, a big move towards tempered woods, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
Tempered woods, as in like roasted maples and things, or okay. We're lucky we're in Canada. We get figured maple of all sorts for relatively good price, as a lot of it's exported from BC where we're at. We use quite a bit of it. For myself, I haven't really noticed a difference other than how it machines or how the use of it is. Customers love the look. Like, I don't know if you've seen Ernie Ball necks are always gorgeous with like the roasted maple look and the oiled finish. It looks so good. So we want to do something like that where it just visually looks appealing and more expensive. But for myself, I don't actually notice a difference. And I know people are going to tell me I'm silly, but at the end of the day, I feel like when you're doing electric guitars, it comes mostly from the electric components, and the wood is just there to either look pretty. I think there is a resonance that comes from it, but who knows how much we actually hear? Like, how much can the human ear actually hear? Is my question. Like, we can hook up machines and see the resonance that the machines pick up, but what we hear, I have no idea. I try not to be a snob, because some of my favorite guitars that I own are like plastic Sears guitars that look really cool. I've got a Hello Kitty Strat, and it's hilarious. And I think it sounds awesome now that I put better pickups in it. But again, with my instruments, I want them to be visually appealing. But for our lower line, we use reclaimed wood. So the bodies are made out of old 100-year-old Vancouver houses stairs. So they're perfectly quarter-sawn fir or spruce, which generally isn't really used in electric guitar making. Some are now, but and then the maple is just reclaimed from wherever we can get it, or from felled trees that we want to take from the city. So we try to keep that lower line as sustainable as possible, and that's my goal, rather than using super expensive things that maybe my ear can't hear.
I mean, I guess one of the things that a lot of people have claimed is that like the tempered woods tend to be more stable in use.
I think Yes. I mean, in Vancouver, we don't have extremes, so I haven't been able to put that into play. But I did have a Cower guitar, or it was a Titan that had a maple neck, and I brought it to Taiwan, and it was perfectly fine. That's the only maple neck I've really traveled with a lot, and it seemed to do fine.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But I can see. I think yes, it's probably more stable because the moisture's been taken out of it when you're moving. But again, for myself, I'm using 10 to 46s. I don't think that's putting too much pressure on an instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you so much for your time and sharing, Meredith. We got to take a look at your workshop at some point in time and some
For
of your
sure.
great instruments, and we'll get that set up soon, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, Terrence.
Great. Thanks, Meredith.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.